So welcome everyone. My name is Maria del Mar Rosa. I am the Secretary of Electrochemical Sensitive for the Right to Health in Spain, and I am delighted to be hosting this afternoon's event. As you may know, today is the International Day Against Electromagnetic Pollution. And first of all, we would like to send our warmest regards to all the groups and individuals who dedicate their time to informing and raising public awareness about this environmental problem around the world. To celebrate this day, we have gathered to present the Green Book on Workstation Adaptation for people with multiple chemical sensitivity and/or electro-hypersensitivity. By the way, the PDF version of the book is already available to download from the Confess website, which we will share with you in a moment in the chat. This book is the English version of the original Spanish text published last November by Confess, the National Coalition for Fibromyalgia, Chronic Fatigue Syndrome, Multiple Chemical Sensitivity, and Electro-Hypersensitivity. Thanks to the funding from the ONCE Foundation, a foundation that is the National Organization of the Blind of Spain, one of the oldest, most reputable, and socially respected associations in Spain. Through its foundation, ONCE has expanded its original scope of action with the primary aim of achieving full social and labor market inclusion for people with any kind of disability. The ONCE support was joined by that of other organizations such as COCEMCE, the Spanish Confederation of People with Physical and Organic Disabilities, whose aim is to achieve full inclusion, universal accessibility, and the active participation of people with disabilities in all areas of society. The Green Book we present today highlights at least two uncomfortable realities for our contemporary societies. The first is the existence of a constantly growing group of people affected by an increasing proliferation of artificial electromagnetic fields. The second is the need for EHS people to gain access or to retain their jobs in order to survive. This challenging and in so many ways inconvenient reality, however, has found a path of recognition in Sweden and the Netherlands under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. For this reason, we wanted to use this opportunity to speak with the pioneers from both countries where this process has already begun, with the two main groups of those affected, our brothers and sisters from both countries, and with those who are currently working to attain this recognition in Spain. I shall now introduce the representatives who kindly join us this afternoon to preside over the event. Each of them will have a couple of 3 minutes to address us. So as not to take up too much time, please allow me to introduce them as they take their turn one by one. Just before that, I want to let you know briefly that we had invited an official from the Ministry of Social Services that has been unable to attend, and afterwards we invited another from the Ministry of Labour who unfortunately is also unable to join us today. Without further ado, I give the floor to Maria López Matallana, President of Confesc, the organization behind the Green Book and host of this event. María.
Gracias, Mar. Yo hablaré en español. Gracias a todos. Buenas tardes a todas y todos. Como presidenta de Confesc, quiero daros la más cordial bienvenida a este encuentro internacional que celebramos hoy con motivo del Día Internacional contra la Contaminación Electromagnética. Para nuestra coalición es una enorme satisfacción contar con la participación de personas procedentes de distintos países, organizaciones, profesionales, investigadores y personas afectadas que compartimos un mismo objetivo: avanzar en el reconocimiento de derechos y en la construcción de entornos más seguros, saludables e inclusivos para las personas con sensibilidad química múltiple y electrohipersensibilidad. Quiero agradecer muy sinceramente la presencia de todos nuestros ponentes por apoyar este acto y por compartir vuestro conocimiento, experiencia y compromiso. Y, por supuesto, gracias también a todas las personas asistentes que nos acompañáis hoy desde diferentes lugares del mundo. Este encuentro tiene un significado muy especial para Confesc, porque supone el lanzamiento internacional de nuestro libro verde sobre adaptación del puesto de trabajo para personas con sensibilidad química múltiple y o electrohipersensibilidad. Se trata de un proyecto en el que hemos trabajado intensamente durante los últimos años y que ha sido posible gracias a la colaboración de numerosas personas expertas, entidades y personas afectadas. Quiero agradecer expresamente el apoyo de Fundación 11, cuyo respaldo ha hecho posible este proyecto. También la colaboración de COCENFE, que camina junto a nosotros con resultados como el que hoy presentamos. El colectivo de personas con discapacidad andamos juntos este camino también. Y esto es una gran fuerza para Confesc y para las personas afectadas. Desde el principio tuvimos claro que este trabajo no podía quedarse únicamente en España. Muchas de las barreras que enfrentan las personas con SQM y EHS son compartidas en diferentes países. Por ello, hemos querido aprovechar esta oportunidad para presentar y compartir el libro verde con compañeros y compañeras internacionales, convencidos de que el intercambio de experiencias y buenas prácticas es fundamental para seguir avanzando. Quiero hacer un agradecimiento especial a Mon González Ferrán por la traducción íntegra del libro verde al inglés. Ella es miembro de la Asociación Electro y Químicos Sensibles por el Derecho a la Salud, que pertenece a Confesc y con quien hoy presentamos este acto. Y también a Isabel Muñoz y a Anabel Tenorio por su labor de revisión. Gracias a su trabajo, este documento podrá llegar a muchas más personas y organizaciones. Y esto es emocionante. Esperamos que esta jornada sea un espacio de aprendizaje, diálogo, colaboración y que contribuya a fortalecer alianzas y a seguir impulsando cambios que mejoren la vida de las personas afectadas por barreras ambientales. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Bienvenidas, bienvenidos.
Thank you so much, Maria, for your words. Also, this afternoon is joining us Daniel Aníbal García, member of the board of COCENFE, the Spanish Confederation of People with Physical and Organic Disabilities. Daniel, welcome. It is your turn.
Thanks so much. Well, afternoon. On behalf of COCENFE, let my first word to be worth recognitions. This Greek book is pioneering achievement, and the credit belongs to Confess. Its leadership, its perseverance, and its ability to bring together scientific evidence, lived experience, clinical rigor, and a firm commitment to human rights. To produce this first document in its kind in our country is not a small thing, and Confess has done it with a rare clarity. COCENFE is so proud to accompany this work and to share the vision without reservation. We do so because multiple chemical sensitivity and electrosensitivity are, first and foremost, organic disabilities. COCENFE is the confederation of people living with physical and organic disabilities, and for us, defending the rights of those living with MCE and MCS is part of defending the rights of every person, every people living with organic disability. Is one as the same cause. This green book is clear-eyed about where we stand. Despite scientific advance, these conditions are still not expressly recognized in our key regulation, neither in the Real Decree 880/2024 nor in the Real Decree 1821/29, and this gap really limits access to disability recognition, to benefits, and to job stability. The occupational risk prevention law already obliges employees to protect particularly sensitive workers, yet the application remains uneven. And the diagnosis of this book offer is one COCENFE fully endorsed. This shortcoming are the matter of technical impossibility. They are a matter of a structural will. It's a matter of discussion. The science exists, the international experience exists, the case law exists. What is missing is the decision to act. One of the great merits of this work is that turn evidence into concrete, workable measures. Individual assessment with the worker. Measures are reversible and reviewable. Clean air and proper ventilation, fragrance-free and radiation-reduced safe zones, wide NECON and the ALARA principle for electromagnetic exposure, and a point that should reach every employee. This adaptation does not only help workers with MCS and AAC, they improve the environment for the entire workforce. Inclusion does not subtract, inclusion adds. So conceptually, the call this book makes recognize MCS formally in the Regulation of Disability, Health, and Employment, build common protocols, prevention, and health surveillance, and do it with a gender and human rights perspective, because this condition fall disproportionately on women. Accessibility is not only architectural or technological, it's a way of understanding coexistence and justice. COFENFE and CONFES walk this path together so that no one is left out of work, health, or community life to lack or understanding or recognition. Because, as we already said, disability is a matter of rights. Thank you, and for me, it's a real pleasure to be with all you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Now it was the time to receive Virginia Carcedo, Secretary General of the ONCE Foundation. But sadly, we are afraid that Virginia hasn't been able to do it at time. We have been advised before because she was joining another meeting. And by now, we send you our warmest regards and all her enthusiasm, as it is the enthusiasm of the ONCE Foundation for this event. If she is able to join us later, we will let you know, and maybe she will have the opportunity to share with us a couple of words. So now it's our very pleasure to welcome Robert van der Boom, current president of the Association Europeans for Safe Connections. Robert, if I may just add, as an aside, I simply cannot fail to mention that for many years you have been the chairman of Stichting EHS, the National EHS Association in the Netherlands. Welcome. It's your turn.
Okay, thank you, Maria, for the opportunity to say a few words. And I'm delighted to contribute to the opening session of this webinar, marking the publication of the Green Book as the chair of ESC. For people who are unknown to the Europeans for Safe Connections, we are an umbrella organization bringing together European organizations working on the health effects of electromagnetic fields. Most of our member organizations are familiar with EHS, one of the key themes of the Green Book. I would like to congratulate the Spanish organizations behind the book: Conquest, EQSDS, SFC, SQM, I don't know whether that's the good translation, and of course the ONCE Foundation on the publication of this book in English, following the Spanish publication, I think, earlier this year. I even received a version translated into Dutch. It looks like an automatic translation, but it reads much easier, of course, for a Dutch-speaking person than English. So apparently there's a lot of interest in the book. We have observed that many people that are sensitive to electromagnetic fields are also sensitive to all kinds of chemicals. In our experience, reactions to chemical substances are similar to the reaction to EMFs, although not identical. And it is highly likely that the sensitivity to chemical substances intensifies or exacerbates sensitivity to EMFs and vice versa. One of the human rights enshrined in the UN is the right to participate in society. Accessibility must be independent of the cause of a disability or the consequences it may have. Given the international classification of diseases, it's not easy for doctors to diagnose someone as sensitive to EMFs. I understand for MCS the situation is already improving in Spain, but not in the whole of Europe. EHS people still must determine for themselves whether their body is indeed reacting to excessive exposure of EMFs. It is their experience, and maybe they have some help from a doctor. But it's not a conclusion that is drawn lightly. The scientist Dieudonné has investigated how EHS people arrive at such an unexpected and undesirable conclusion. Unexpected because almost anyone regarding EMFs as harmless, and undesirable because the conclusion means that one must avoid EMFs. an almost impossible task in this society, which is saturated by EMFs due to the many technical devices that really rely on these fields to function. In my country, MCS is on the verge of official recognition. The finish line is within reach. We hope that once MCS is recognized, EHS will also be in a better position to be recognized as well. Not only in the Netherlands, but also in Europe as a whole, and of course in Spain. I would like to finish my brief remarks by expressing my expectation and hope that the Green Book will improve accessibility to the workplace, the hospital, and all other places in society for people with disabilities caused by chemical substances or electromagnetic fields, not only in Spain, but in the whole of Europe as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob, for joining us and for your kind words. Well, closing the welcome panel is the turn of my colleague, Pilar Aleza Izquierdo, Chair of EQSDS and co-organizers and co-host of this wonderful project. Pilar.
Muchas gracias, Mal. Ha sido un honor para electroquímicos sensibles por el derecho a la salud colaborar en la organización de este encuentro y damos la bienvenida y agradecemos la presencia de todos los intervinientes en el día de hoy, así como de quienes nos están viendo. También queremos agradecer a la Fundación 11 y COCENFE su enorme implicación en el libro verde y a Mon González Ferrán por la traducción al inglés. Como Asociación Nacional de Personas Afectadas por Electrohipersensibilidad y Sensibilidad Química Múltiple, sabemos lo que significa enfrentarse a situaciones de exclusión social y extrema vulnerabilidad en la que todos los ámbitos de la vida se ven alterados profundamente. Mientras se experimenta el abandono de las instituciones, la incomprensión del entorno y una pérdida de credibilidad que convierten la supervivencia en un acto de heroísmo. La magnitud del desconocimiento de lo que implica la contaminación electromagnética artificial es sorprendente y difícilmente explicable sin la interferencia de fuertes intereses. Cuando, por ejemplo, los estudios de los efectos biomédicos del campo electromagnético en Rusia abarcan por lo menos 130 años y los primeros registros de personas afectadas por electrohipersensibilidad, aunque con otra denominación, datan de casi hace un siglo. Desde entonces hasta ahora se ha acumulado una sólida literatura científica a la que se han sumado una ingente cantidad de declaraciones científicas e institucionales, resoluciones judiciales y documentos de diversos organismos sanitarios y medioambientales, así como un creciente porcentaje de afectados, como muestra el estudio poblacional en Australia, Canadá y Estados Unidos, publicado este mes de junio. Nos encontramos ante un inmenso caso por resolver que espera una respuesta y una solución urgente y que demanda aplicar el principio de precaución y la protección de los afectados, como hizo la Asamblea Parlamentaria del Consejo de Europa en su resolución 1815 o como hizo el Parlamento Europeo en el año 2009 cuando pidió a los Estados miembros que sigan el ejemplo de Suecia y reconozcan como una discapacidad la hipersensibilidad eléctrica con el fin de garantizar una protección adecuada e igualdad de oportunidades a las personas que la sufren. A este respecto, aprovechamos para pedir, como reivindica Ecologistas en Acción, la creación de la Comisión Pública sobre Radiofrecuencias y Salud, de la que carecemos en España, a pesar de estar contemplada por la ley. Por último, a toda la documentación referida anteriormente se añade ahora el Libro Verde, en el que tuvimos el honor de colaborar y cuya publicación celebramos en noviembre pasado, sin dejar de repetir que era un antes y un después. Y hoy tenemos la ocasión de compartir experiencias con representantes de otros países, esperando lo mejor de este intercambio para conseguir el reconocimiento necesario tan esperado. Gracias una vez más por estar aquí en este día tan especial.
Well, thank you, Pilar, for your words. Thank you to all the representatives for the words of welcome and the contextual introduction. Let's now move on today's invited speakers, starting with the Swedish delegation. As is well known, in 2000, Sweden became the first country in the world to officially recognize electrohypersensitivity. Today, we would like to find out how this milestone came about and what the experience of recognition has been like for those affected. It is my great pleasure to give the floor, first of all, to Ole Johansson, who needs no introduction, but anyway, and as he likes to introduce himself, it is a retired but very active professor from the Karolinska Institute and the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. Ole, welcome.
Thank you very much indeed for those very generous words. It's such an honor to be invited today and share this conference with all of you and with the whole world, and with the release of your green book, which is so exciting, important, and interesting. I have found a lot of things in it that definitely would help people with multiple chemical sensitivity as well as electrohypersensitivity. One has to realize that electrohypersensitive people actually will teach anyone a lot. And since they have a relevant avoidance reaction to a potentially toxic environment, as the classical yellow canary birds in the coal mines, we should thank them. We should really acknowledge their contribution to public health. And maybe it is them that are the new normal, and the rest of us, like myself, we are hyposensitive. We don't react to all these man-made electromagnetic fields and signals. Maybe one should quickly summarize the history. As you know, the very first person that could be electrohypersensitive, we don't know for sure, but that was the entrepreneur and inventor Nikola Tesla. Later on, if we jump forward to the end of the 1970s, the first cases of what was called then electrical allergy came forward from Norway and from the United States. But very quickly, they were followed with cases from all over the world, including the People's Republic of China, Russia, from the continent, Africa, Europe, United States, Canada, and so on. More and more people gathered. And today, the most famous electrohypersensitive person is maybe the former Prime Minister of Norway, the former head of the World Health Organization, and the medical doctor Gro Harlem Brundtland. For myself, it started in 1977, so no one was actually born then of all the people on this meeting now. It's a long, long time ago. And I got very interested in the possibility that man-made electromagnetic fields and signals could have a backside. Early 1980s, I listened to a radio program, and then I got into contact with the union representative in Sweden. Her name is Kajsa Vedin, and together with a physicist, we started the first meetings and the first discussions regarding electrical allergy, or as it was renamed a few years later, screen dermatitis, because most of the cases, 9 out of 10, had the start in front of the newly introduced personal computer screens. Then we worked in my group very, very hard for decades, and we had to fight off medical doctors, oddly enough, primarily in clinical dermatology, who told me that electrohypersensitive people, they were just crazy. It was all in their head. They were postmenopausal women. And then men started to appear. And then they said, no, we meant these are people with a low level of education. And then assistant professors, lawyers, politicians, and so appeared. So then they said, no, we went the opposite. People with a very high education, they are the people that get stressed when the printer and the computer doesn't work, and then they believe something is wrong with the actual computer. They had a lot of other explanations to try to get people into the psychiatric and psychological corner. But they failed, of course, because what I said was that let's test rats, animals. The basis for that was that people said that this was just a mass media-driven psychosis. Like now, when we talk about electron hypersensitivity, then people start to think, oh, maybe I have a little bit of that too. But we exposed rats to the very same type of electromagnetic fields and signals, and they got the very same reactions in their skin and in other organs, in spite of the fact that they never read any newspapers, they never listen to radio or watch television. And from that moment on, I said, this is nothing of all these psychological and psychiatrical explanatory models. This is just a plain reaction to radiation. And that became our working hypothesis. How did we then reach the recognition? And I have to repeat, which I've done many times, when it comes to any form of disability, the one that should recognize his or her disability is only the person himself or herself. The UN Convention and other such disability acts do not ask for any formal recognition of a medical doctor or of a politician or of a king, president, or of your mother. It's only yourself that should recognize the functional impairment. What we did at the end of the 1990s and beginning of 2000 was to approach the Minister for Health, and we asked very simply, electron hypersensitive people, are they normal? No, he said, they are not. Do they have an accredited illness? No, they don't, he said. Well, then there is only one box more to tick, namely the box which is called functional impairment. And he said, yes. And he also said that the national and international laws and regulations fully encompass electron hypersensitivity without any exceptions. So that was a complete recognition, but it was superfluous in the sense that only the person, him or herself, could do the actual recognition. And this happened in the year 2000. The very same year, the Nordic Council of Ministers also classified the symptoms, not the functional impairment, but the symptoms, as an occupationally related symptom-based diagnosis. And it was entered into the International Code of Diagnoses. And that means that a person with electron hypersensitivity can get an economic compensation, they can be treated by a physician, and they can be allowed to have a sick leave based upon the symptoms. But the underlying reaction to the environment is the only basis for the actual functional impairment. And the patient is the toxic environment, and the diagnosis belongs to it, and accessibility measures, they are the treatment. And that means that a person with electron hypersensitivity or multiple chemical sensitivity, they are regarded as completely normal, but they have an avoidance reaction to a potentially toxic environment that can hit anyone. But they are the ones that react as the yellow canary bird. As you know, in Sweden also early, an organization was formed, the Swedish Association for the Electron Hypersensitive, and Anders Brännstedt, the current head of that organization, will talk in a few minutes. And they also belong to the Swedish Disability Foundation. And they get a governmental subsidy and so on, so on. Swedish municipalities, they follow the United Nations 22 standard rules on the equalization of opportunities for people with disabilities. And that was changed in 2007, upgraded into the UN Convention on Human Rights for Persons with Functional Impairments. And all the issues around such functional impairments belong to municipalities, not the county councils, because a medical doctor, as I said before, can treat the symptoms, but they cannot treat the environment. There you need technicians, building biologists, electricians, and other experts. And there your green book falls into place, because that could be like a manual for any technician, electrician, or building biologist to follow and initiate a buildup of a very good environment for a person with MCS and or electron hypersensitivity. It's also very important to remember the Swedish government in the year 2000 also renamed all people with disabilities from previously having been called patients, but from the year 2000, you have to call them citizens. They are completely normal, but they have a functional impairment or variability, as it's called nowadays. And the human rights are extremely important to always follow. And also I see that, for instance, in the Netherlands, recently they have an approach regarding banking accessibility. And in Sweden, thanks to the Swedish Association, they have recently come forward with educational rights, demands for educational rights for people with electrohypersensitivity. And my view has always been that you need to knock hard on every door. And the good thing with having an impairment, in the sense, if anything could be good with that, is that you have a very big legal umbrella. And all of that, of course, goes back to the atrocities before and during the Second World War. So after that, people said no more again. And therefore, we have this very big umbrella. The umbrella is bigger than if you have a disease or illness, and it's bigger than if you are healthy and normal. So it grows for each level here. And with the Green Book, you can cover even another patch of this umbrella. I wish you all success. I'm very old, so soon I will just be history. But I would like to thank all the lovely, lovely people around the world that made my history worth experiencing. Thank you.
Mar, no estás mutada.
Sorry. I was thanking Ole, Professor Johansson, for his words, and also introducing Anders Brännstedt, Chair of the Swedish Association for Electrosensitive People. Anders, we are thrilled to listen to your testimony.
Thank you. I'm not hypersensitive myself, but my wife is. So I've known this problem for almost 40 years. And that's why I engaged myself in our association for people with EHS. We are approximately 2,000 members in the national organization. About 70% are female. And we are, I'm sad to say, an aging lot in the sense that we lack younger people as members. Last summer, I wanted to get in touch with those we see as younger, so I asked for a list of members who were born in 1980 or later, so I could call them and ask what they thought would be the best way to recruit younger people. The list turned out to consist 28 names. This gives a picture of how difficult it is to get younger people to join an old school organization with member fees and a printed magazine. Naturally, we are also present on the internet with a lot of information for the public regarding many aspects of EHS. And it is probably there we can find new younger members. As a national association, we have regional representations as well. We have in 14 of a total of 21 regions in Sweden. On the national level, one of our priorities and most important task is to support the regional organizations since they are in close contact with our members. A major support given to the entire association comes from our office in Stockholm. We have one employee who works half-time. Among other things, she answers phone calls from members who needs advice in different situations, or maybe they just want to talk with somebody who understands their predicaments, especially Monday mornings, when they often have been alone during the weekend. This was a brief overview of how we are organized in Sweden, but how can we afford this? Luckily enough, we have got a grant from the government, and that is 80% of our budget. And this is spent on our office personnel, editing and printing, our magazine, contribution to the regions for their local work, stamps, IT services, etc. Last year we had a bit of a financial crisis because we were denied the grant from the government. We appealed to an administrative court and they ruled in our favor. While waiting for the ruling, we had to prepare for the worst and start planning for reductions of our activities. So when asking our members what was most important not to cut back on, the most frequent answer was the magazine. It is published 4 times a year, and as you understand, this is important due to the difficulty many members experience with digital communication. Furthermore, as Olle mentioned, we are also part of the National Association for Disabled People. We are one of 53 member organizations. This means both support and security for us. The membership is one of the conditions for applying for the governmental grant. One of the most current and also most promising issues this year is the question of making the United Nations Convention for Disabled People into Swedish national law. Sweden has already signed that convention, and in September this year we will have general elections to our parliament, regional and local political assemblies. So together with all the other organizations, we are trying to make politicians and political parties to put this question high up on their agendas. The United Nations Convention for the Rights of the Child has already been included in our legal system, so we have a good example to refer to. Coming back to the grant from the government, the cornerstone of our economy. The application form contains 10 socio-political areas, of which we have to address at least 5. 4 of those are part of your book: healthcare, employment, housing, and education. Your 5th area, public spaces, is obviously part of public communications, culture, etc. So I found your book very interesting and inspiring, especially your discussion of the social model of disability in contrast to the medical model. When contacting authorities, they often directly or implicitly refer to the medical model in their answers to our questions and proposals, and therefore we are often met with a negative attitude. The title of your book is The Number Behind MCS and EHS, and as I previously said, we are 2,000 members in our organization, but statistically we do not exist due to the lack of medical diagnosis. But the fact is that we are many more that are afflicted from symptoms from the electromagnetic fields we are surrounded by in society today. In a survey conducted by the Authority for Public Health in 2015, more than 40% of the respondents answered that they were affected in some degree, severely and less severely. This is not surprising, since I believe that Sweden is very high in digitalization. Some examples: you cannot park your car in a public parking lot if you don't have a smartphone with an app to pay the parking fee. If you need a new identity card, you have to visit a police station, often full of electromagnetic fields. Earlier, you could have someone to come to your home, take the photograph and take all the information they needed to make a new identity card. And this is very severe, since we have members who cannot get their prescribed medicines from the pharmacy, since they don't have a valid ID card. And this is one of the major issues we're working right now, to get the authorities to go back to home visits as well. And for ourselves, for myself and my wife, the problem is our neighbors, because all of them have those smart television sets that are run by Wi-Fi routers, and it's quite hard to avoid all those signals. And this time of year, the lawns are cut by wireless lawn mowers. We have 2 right outside our house that are running all the time, and my wife, she can sense that. And as you know, there are more and more devices that makes everyday life difficult for people with EHS in Sweden. So sometimes I think that Sweden has an undeserved good reputation when it comes to the situation for people with EHS. The level of knowledge in the public regarding EHS is low, and many people, they have never heard of it, and they are surprised, and they sometimes, I get the feeling they don't want to hear any more about it, because that would interrupt the way they lead their lives. So I believe an important way forward for us is to cooperate internationally through Europeans for Safe Connections and other international organizations. So I'm pleased to be here tonight to listen to and take part in this webinar. Thank you especially to you who have organized this webinar. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Anders, for sharing your experiences. We hope the younger will join the association little by little and keep it alive and fight back as the problem doesn't look back to diminishing anytime soon. Just the words for Ole, just as further in time as possible. You are going to be history, that's for sure. In fact, you are present history already. So there's no need to wait for that. That speaks volumes of your work and your implication. And most of all, let me tell you, you will always be present in all of our hearts. So thank you. Thank you both.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Well, we now move on to the Netherlands. Well, the subtitles doesn't let me see my own text. So there we go. The recognition of EHS in the Netherlands has come more recently. At the end of 2023, the Dutch Foundation Stichting EHS secured recognition, which was later confirmed by the Dutch Institute for Human Rights. Martin Brins, legal advisor to Stichting EHS and a leading expert in the Netherlands, will now tell us the details of the Dutch approach. Martin, welcome.
Welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think I should go first to introduce and then introduce Martina.
Okay.
Well, then as you prefer. I was keeping the same order as Sweden, but it's fine.
I think I cannot introduce Martina then better.
So now, but let me tell who you are, Chantal.
Yes.
Chantal Halmans is the chair of the Dutch Association Stichting EHS. We're delighted to have you among us this evening. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Welcome, Chantal.
Okay, thank you. Yes, well, thank you for inviting us for this important moment in time and giving us the opportunity to give a brief summary of the developments concerning the position of people with EHS in the Netherlands. My name is Chantal Halmans. I'm the new chair of the Dutch EHS Foundation, and I took over from Rob van der Boom, who's also present here. The Dutch Stichting EHS was established in 2007 with the aim of providing a scientific understanding of the issues surrounding electromagnetic fields and health. Over time, the foundation's focus has shifted towards becoming a more patient-oriented organization. This shift has been formalized in the foundation's Articles of Association in 2022. The three pillars of our organization are supporting people in learning to cope with EMFs, advocating for their rights, and contributing to the expertise on EHS. The EHS Foundation relies on volunteers and private donations of over 200 donors. We run a very informative website and an EHS helpline. We also have a report center through which one can report its EHS symptoms via an online questionnaire. We also organize peer support and work together with doctors and judicial advisors. Our estimates of the prevalence of EHS in the Netherlands are 3 to 5% of the population. The national survey in 2016, the Kantar study, suggests a prevalence of only 3% of the Dutch population. This research, though, has never officially been published because a Dutch gatekeeper organization concluded it was not representative with only 750 subjects. We regard a prevalence of 3 to 5% as a conservative estimate and that we are only seeing the tip of the iceberg, especially when you compare it with a recent Australian study that talks about an average of 12% of the population. From 2014 till 2025, 1,452 people have reported to us about their EHS symptoms, some more than once, with a total of 1,759. In 2025, respondents rated the severity of their symptoms on average at 8.7 on a scale of 1 to 10, and the extent to which these symptoms limit them in their daily lives at 8.3. These figures confirm that the perceived impact is significant and highlights the importance of continuing to focus on this issue, as with the Green Book presented today. Someone with EHS experiences that his or her world becomes smaller every day. Lockdown every day. People find themselves in a permanent lockdown, and loneliness is high on those affected. The suffering at an individual level is immense, and to be honest, impossible to express in the figures previously mentioned. Speaking of figures, in a society that is becoming increasingly dependent on wireless technology, people with this sensitivity may be unintentionally excluded from workplaces, services, and public life. This can lead to reduced labor force participation, lower productivity, and higher healthcare costs. Such costs are often overlooked in traditional cost-benefit analysis. Following the very clear and practical steps in reducing exposure to wireless radiation presented in this Green Book will contribute to improved accessibility, greater social participation, and lower economic costs. And above all, it will result in more resilient, vibrant, healthier, and happier people. Who wouldn't want that? So where do we stand now in this process towards a more EHS inclusive society? We in the Netherlands are noticing that more and more people realize that EMFs are not without risks. The creation of the Green Book is a powerful example of what this growing awareness brings. In the Netherlands, the EHS Foundation cooperates with EMF-aware doctors that recognize EHS, both national and international. And together we have developed a diagnostic tool for EHS. Another major step is that in 2023, the Dutch EHS Foundation received formal confirmation that the EHS is recognized as a disability under national and international legislation and treaties. And Martine Vriends, legal advisor to the EHS Foundation, can now elaborate on that. Thank you.
So Martine, thank you very much, Chantal.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I will share. I made a small presentation just so I'll share it. 1 second. Yeah. Yeah, is that, did I share it? Yeah. Okay, I will introduce myself. I have been introduced by the two of you, but good evening and nice. Thanks for the invitation. It's a great achievement, your book, and I read it with it's so good, and I think what it's in it from all different perspectives can help us so much internationally. So thanks for that. I am Martine Vriends. I'm a legal advisor. I'm working in the field of electromagnetic fields and health now since 13 years. At the moment, I'm a legal advisor to the EHS Foundation and also a member of the working group Inclusion. I used to work as a senior legal advisor for an NGO, and my specialty was the refugee law and human rights law. But it happened that I became ill at the workplace because they installed Wi-Fi at my work. So that's why I specialized in EMF later on. Today I would like to share the Dutch experience about EHS regarding, I have to also use my thing, I think. The Dutch experience regarding the EHS and disability rights. The Netherlands is mentioned lately about the as an example of progress in this area, and it's our experience will tell about. It's not about creating a new legal framework, but we use the existing human rights law and equality frameworks. So in particular, the Convention of Persons with Disabilities. So my aim today is to explain what happened in the Netherlands. I will mention the steps we made to achieve this formal recognition. And I will also explore what lessons other European countries may draw from our experience. We all are known with the situation that when you come forward with EHS, they say it's below the ICNIRP guidelines, and it can't harm you under the limits, and then story over, and you are there with all your complaints. So we were wondering if we can rely on the same disability rights framework as other groups who face barriers to participation. So that's why we chose not to focus on this political debates about whether it exists as a medical condition, because it didn't help us at all. So instead, we focused on the existing equality law and the existing institutions, and this turned out to be a very strategic choice. And it's because the starting point of the disability rights framework is the convention, we mentioned before, and all EU member states have ratified this convention, so it's applicable in all European countries. And the convention requires governments to promote accessibility, inclusion, equal participation, and non-discrimination. And it also introduces the concept of reasonable accommodations. This means that parties are obliged to remove barriers where necessary to enable equal participation. So the standard is everybody must be able to participate in society equally, like, also persons with conditions. So for people with EHS, this may include that measures must be made to reduce exposure on EMF, for example, in the workplace, schools, or public services. And the important thing about the convention, it doesn't use a narrow medical definition of disability. So it's based, what have we mentioned before, it's on the social model of disability. And the social model is different than the medical model. And according to this model, disability results from the interaction between a person's impairment and their environment, which prevents full participation. So the focus is not on a medical diagnosis, but on whether a person's experience long-term limitation and barriers. And that's very important for people with EHS, because for people, especially for persons with EHS, it's the environment what affect them. It's the EMF. What is the problem? Right. So I want to go through the steps we made to invoke this convention naturally. Now we started to question, who we should address, who we should engage in invoking the convention. So in the Netherlands, the Ministry of Health is responsible for the convention and responsible for the coordination of the implementation of the convention, of this convention. So in 2022, we wrote a letter to the Ministry of Health, and we explained about EHS, we explained the problems, and we explained the barriers they experience in their daily lives. And we said they should fall within the scope of this. We didn't say they should fall. We said they fall within the scope of the disability rights policy, and we requested that the foundation, Dutch EHS Foundation, would be involved in the implementation of this UN convention. And in that regard, we pointed out to the Article 4, paragraph 3 of the convention. That's a very important paragraph for us, because in that paragraph is said that government should not make disability policy without involving the people and organizations concerned. So the ministry referred us to IDERIN. IDERIN is a Dutch umbrella organization for disability and patient organizations. We had a meeting with them, and they immediately confirmed that people with EHS can fall within the scope of the convention. And it was a first important step because it showed that the disability sector itself did not consider EHS to be excluded. The next step, iedereen advised us to engage with the Dutch Institute of Human Rights because they said they could be helpful for us. So we organized a meeting with them, and why this institution is important because it monitors the implementation of the convention, advises the government, and handles discrimination complaints under equality law. And they also handled discrimination complaints for people with EHS. So that's important to know. And even they said, yeah, you fall within the scope of this convention, and the reasoning was important because they explained that it focuses on a person's limitation and barriers they face in society. And they said, even if a condition is controversial in the medical field, a person can still fall under disability protection if there are long-term limitations affecting participation. And they said it is in this approach is consistent with the social model underlying the convention. And the institute, the Dutch Human Rights Institute, referred also to case law of the Court of Justice of the European Union, so to the definition of a disability. So yeah, that was a milestone for us. So we thought, yeah, let's go back to the Ministry of Health and we report the outcomes of these discussions. And the ministry then confirmed pretty easily that people with EHS, like everyone else, have a right to accessibility and inclusion. So we were really happy. You know, we opened the bottles of champagnes because the Ministry of Health affirming this is very significant. And now we ended up with that all key institutions, its disability organization, human rights institutions, and also the government all aligned in this interpretation. What does this mean in practice? It's only a starting point because then it has to be implemented, and that's another thing because it doesn't automatically solve all problems, but what it does is it provides an important legal and policy framework. And it means for people with EHS that society should be accessible and persons have to be included and they should be able to participate. And their reasonable accommodation can be discussed within this human rights law. We also found out that invoking the convention helped organizations to make reasonable accommodations. You know, they are not always so willing, but when you invoke this treaty, it helped. It helped, and I give individual advice as well. So I always invoke this, and it helps a lot. And it's interesting because the focus is not on the medical diagnosis, but the focus is just on the social model. It also, now you know, the exact outcome always depends on the individual situation and national law, of course. But it's no longer only about whether EHS exists. What did we do after this recognition? Then you have to implement it. So we informed the Dutch EHS Foundation. We focused on informing organizations. For example, we informed all municipalities on EHS and that they fall within the scope of the convention. And we informed the Association of Dutch Municipalities, and we informed also the National Knowledge Platform, who advises citizens and organizations about EMF and health. That's an official governmental organization. So they put it on their website as well about EHS and as a disability. And we have seen a growing interest also from these municipalities and public bodies, and they seek information about EHS. So that's an important step. And it shows that recognition is not only a legal issue, but it's also about awareness, implementation, and practical inclusion. What lessons are there for European countries? Wait. Okay, I skip a few. The important is that the convention already exists in every EU member state, so you all can invoke the convention already. And it's important because there's no need to start from scratch. Other countries can build an experience that already exists, including the Dutch experience and the Swedish experience. And so build on the convention and this national equality legislation. Second, it is important to engage with institutions that are already responsible for disability rights. So what we did, like patient organizations, disability umbrella organizations, national human rights institutions, equality bodies, and ministries. They already exist, so it helps. We have a good. They help us as well because they are a big, an umbrella organization has also contacts, so it's very good for networking and or they can support you or support letters and things like that. Third, organizations representing people, they should not underestimate their own role in this process because states are obliged to involve persons with disabilities and involve their representative organizations. So they just can't simply say no to that. And it gives an important basis to engage in the dialogue with the governments and different institutions. And it's all about the social model of disability. That's the starting point. That it doesn't depend on the scientific and medical consensus, but the focus shifts to long-term limitations and barriers that prevent equal participation. And it's not about one big recognition. The progress takes place through a series of small institutional steps rather than just one political decision. To conclude is that it's interesting that no new legislation was needed, and it doesn't depend on the scientific or medical consensus, but it's if persons have functional impairments and can fully participate in society. And that's consistent with the social model of disability. And it didn't require a new legal category for EHS, but it was about dialogue, interpretation, and implementation of this existing disability rights frameworks. And it required this cooperation between these different organizations. So we hope that our experience can serve as a useful example for other European countries and encourage further discussions on accessibility, inclusion, and equal participation for people with EHS. So thanks a lot for your attention.
Well, Chantal, Martin, thank you very much. Ole, Anders. The Swedish and the Dutch experience with all the shared details are very illuminating for us. It is time now for the Spanish speakers. The first will be Anabel Tenorio, which is the Secretary of CONFES, the project's promoter. Anabel is in charge of presenting, finally, the Green Book project.
Thank you, Mark. Vamos a dar primero paso a la doctora Pilar Muñoz Calero porque tiene un compromiso. Y vamos a dar paso a ella, puede ser perfectamente que a continuación vaya Anabel. Gracias.
Okay, so now we change places. It's going to talk, as María said, la doctora Pilar Muñoz Calero, founder and co-director of the Chair of Pathology and of the Environment. Sorry, I have, this test is a bit mixed. Sí, founder and co-director of the Chair of Pathology and the Environment at the Complutense University of Madrid. And she's a very recognized expert in environmental medicine and scientific coordinator of the Green Book. Pilar, welcome. Sorry for the mess.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. And I'm sorry, but I have some problem with the connection, internet connection, and I have to turn the camera off. And I'm going to share the presentation where we are exploring the invisible overload. Okay. Ahora, ¿cómo la comparto? A ver. Aquí. Aquí. Y aquí. Vale, ya la presentación aquí. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. As you can see, the focus is on the biomedical reality and the clinical challenges surrounding multiple chemical sensitivity, or MCS, and electromagnetic hypersensitive. This is not an isolated or rare issue. We are facing a rising global epidemic. We are seeing alarming statistics worldwide. For example, in 2016, 12.8% of the United States population was diagnosed with MCS, which represent a massive increase of over 300 in just a decade. We see similar high prevalence rates in Japan and Australia. Ultimately, millions are affected globally due to the exponential increase of chemical stressor in our modern environment. What exactly is MCS? It is a chronic acquired disease characterized by adverse symptoms upon exposure to very low level of everyday toxic chemicals. It predominantly affects women and is officially recognized with an ICD-10 medical code. Diagnosis relies on 6 consensus criteria established in 1999, which emphasizes that reaction occur at very low doses, involve multiple unrelated substances, and fundamentally impact the central nervous system. For these patients, the world is full of everyday triggers, things that the rest of the population assumes to be completely safe, like personal care perfumes, home air freshener, cleaning detergents, and even paints, became disabling. It is crucial for clinicians to understand that patients are not reacting via a classic allergy, but rather to synthetic chemicals compounds at extremely low environmentally relevant doses. The physical impact of this exposure is profoundly multisystemic. While the central nervous system is at the core of the condition, causing extreme fatigue, brain fog, disorientation, and headaches, the reactions severely affect other areas too. Patients frequently suffer from respiratory issues like dry cough, gastrointestinal problems like recurrent diarrhea, skin and mucosa irritation, and severe musculoskeletal joint pain. The underlying mechanism driving this condition is known as TILT, toxicant-induced loss of tolerance. TILT occurs in 2 distinct phases. As you can see in the graphic, first, at the beginning, a chemical exposure permanently alters the neural networks through a process called limbic kindling, which irreversibly lowers the body's activation threshold. In the second phase, the body is now sensitized and will consistently react to microscopic everyday chemical doses. Biologically, we are looking at central sensitization. This involves the hyperactivation of chemosensitivity receptors in the brain, such as NMDA and RPV1, this hyperreactivation triggers a vicious cycle. Increased systemic inflammation and severe oxidative stress led to greater permeability of the blood-brain barrier, which in turn allows even more chemicals to penetrate the brain. It is also important to note that MCS rarely exists in isolation. It sits within a triangle of comorbidities, alongside fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. Over 50% of fibromyalgia patients and more than 60% of chronic fatigue syndrome patients also suffer from MCS. This high overlap heavily suggests they share underlying pathophysiological mechanisms, primarily severe oxidative stress and systemic detoxification failures. Alongside MCS, we must also discuss its twin condition. Electromagnetic hypersensitivity is a real somatic and neurological disorder provoked by exposure to non-ionizing electromagnetic fields like Wi-Fi and mobile networks at low intensity. It affects anywhere from 2.7% to 7.2% of the population in certain European countries and act as a synergistic environmental stressor, overlapping with MCS in 30% to 18% of cases. If we compare both conditions side by side, we see a clear analytical synthesis. Despite having different environmental triggers, synthetic chemicals versus artificial radiation, they affect the exact same target organs and share identical biological mechanisms like endogenous oxidative stress and systemic inflammation. Furthermore, both conditions can be objectively proven through clinical evidence like PET, SPECT, brain scans, and altered EEGs. Despite this strong scientific evidence, there is a massive crumbling gap in our daily healthcare system. Patients face historical diagnostic delays and psychological stigmatization simply because doctors lack training in talking environmental exposure histories. We urgently need to integrate environmental medicine into university curricula and continuously train physicians. To help bridge this gap, we have a clear and established diagnostic route, and primary care doctors can use the BRESI filter and rapid three-question tool to quickly identify chemically intolerant individuals. Once identified, specialist care can confirm the diagnosis using the KESI, an internationally validated 50-item questionnaire that objectively assesses triggers, symptom severity, and quality of life deterioration. When it comes to treatment, we rely on two main pillars. Pillar one is environmental control. This is the primary and most fundamental intervention, creating safe space and completely eliminating exposure to fragrant, synthetic chemicals, and electromagnetic radiation. Pillar 2 provides metabolic support through specific nutritional supplementation, oxygen therapy, and therapies like controlled saunas to enhance organic detoxification. This brings us to a critical alert regarding our healthcare infrastructure. Conventional hospital environment are frequently chemically hostile and dangerous for these patients. There is an urgent need for hospitals to implement barrier protocols and create fragrance-free white space so these patients can safely receive medical care. Ultimately, we must view this patient as the canaries in the coal mine. MCS is not an isolated anomaly. It is an early warning system revealing the underlying toxicity of modern life, showing us that toxic doses are silently eroding the health of the broader population. We already see this with asthma, where over 60% react to synthetic fragrances, and we must treat this with the same seriousness as we do endocrine disruptor. And finally, to conclude, I want to leave you with 3 main points. First, MCS and EHS are a biological reality. They are systemic neurological pathologies, no psychological condition. Second, we are facing a rising silent epidemic that is severely incapacitating millions of people globally. And third, we must start viewing the environment and medicine. A strict environmental control is the primary treatment, which demands that we adapt our society and capacitate our healthcare system immediately. Thank you very much.
Oh my God, sorry, I couldn't find the audio icon. So thank you very much, Pilar. And now we go back to Anabel Tenorio, who was about presenting the Green Book project. Anabel, are you ready?
Yes, thank you very much.
There you go.
I'm going to share here. Let's see. Where is it? Goodness. Here. Where is it? I'm sorry. It was ready, but let's see. Let's see. Don't remember exactly how to full screen. Let's see. Well, I'm sorry. I can't fix it, but can you see it?
Podemos ver tu fondo de pantalla, Anabel.
Vemos
Digamos
la carpeta.
El buscador de archivos.
Ay, qué desastre. Pues que lo tengo aquí, lo tengo abierto, lo tenía abierto y no me deja ver el que tenía yo preparado. Si antes lo
tenías arriba a la izquierda, por lo menos parece Green Book. On the top left, it seems to be the PDF with the Green Book presentation.
Yes, let's see.
Anabel.
It was ready, you know. Up here. Can you see it now?
Not yet.
No. Es posible que le hayas dado a compartir solo a una ventana y tienes que darle a compartir a todo para que te salga.
Here, let's see. And now?
Yes.
Sí, perfecto.
Thank you. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anabel Tenorio. I'm the Secretary of CONFESC, the Spanish National Coalition representing organizations of fibromyalgia, myalgic encephalomyelitis, or chronic fatigue syndrome, multiple chemical sensitivity, and electrohypersensitivity. Currently, CONFESC brings together more than 65 member associations and federations across Spain, giving a collective voice to around 15,000 people living with these conditions. CONFESC works closely with major national umbrella organizations and is also actively involved in several European and international networks, including the European Network of Fibromyalgia Associations, ENFA, the European ME Alliance, EMEA, Pain Alliance Europe, PAE, and the International Multiple Chemical Sensitivity Consortium that is about MCS. And now it's my pleasure to present the English edition of the Green Book on Workstation Adaptation for people with multiple chemical sensitivity and electro-hypersensitivity. From now on, I'll simply refer to them as MCS and EHS. First of all, I would like to briefly explain how this project came about, why Confess decided to develop it, and why we believe it can become a useful tool not only in Spain, but also in many other countries across Europe. During the next few minutes, I will guide you through 5 aspects of the Green Book: its context, its structure, its multidisciplinary authorship, its objectives, and finally, why we felt it was so important to publish it in English. Because today we are presenting much more than a book. We are presenting a project that reflects the collaboration between patient organizations, healthcare professionals, legal experts, disability specialists, and many other people committed to building more accessible and inclusive workplaces. I hope that after this presentation, you will understand not only what the Green Book contains, but also why Confess believed it was necessary to create it. Like many important initiatives, it did not begin with a publication. It began with some questions that patient organizations throughout Spain had been hearing for many years. For example, how can a person continue working when the environment itself becomes a barrier? What adaptations are possible? What responsibilities do employers have? How can occupational health services respond? Or why are so many people suffering from MCS or EHS are forced to leave work because workplaces are not adapted? We know that it's not because they are unable to work. They have the knowledge, the experience, and the professional skills. What they often lack is not capacity, it's accessibility. We also realize that although we have some valuable scientific publication in Spain, it still lacked a practical guide bringing together biomedical knowledge, disability rights, occupational health, labor legislation, and real workplace adaptation strategies, all of this in a single document. From the beginning, we decided to start with employment, because work is much more than having a job. It means independence. It means dignity. It means participation. It means inclusion. We thought, if we are able to demonstrate that environmental accessibility and reasonable accommodations can make employment possible, we can also create a model that may inspire adaptations in many other areas of life. For example, in education, transportation, healthcare facilities, public spaces. A practical guide that not only describes a problem, but it helps build solutions. The Green Book is organized into 5 main sections. The first one introduces MCS and EHS from a biomedical perspective, as Dr. Muñoz Calero has shown us. Its purpose is just to help readers understand these conditions and their impact on daily life. The second section focuses on disability, accessibility, and human rights, and it's going to be Paloma Torres, our legal advisor, who will go into more detail after my presentation. The third section examines the legal and occupational framework. This chapter has been developed specifically within the Spanish legal system because employment legislation is different in every country. However, we believe that this structure could easily be adapted to other national contexts. The legal references may change, but the underlying principles remain the same: protecting workers, promoting accessibility, and guaranteeing equal rights. The fourth section presents practical workplace adaptation measures and recommendations that employers, occupational health professionals, and public administrations can consider when supporting workers with MCS or EHS. And finally, the Green Book concludes with a chapter that is especially meaningful for us: the success stories, real experiences which remind us that accessibility changes lives. They prove that inclusion is not only an ideal, it's something that we can truly achieve. Right from the start, we understood that no single profession could provide all the answers to the challenges faced by people with MCS and EHS in the workplace. That is why the Green Book brought together professionals and organizations from many different fields. As you know, the project was coordinated by CONFESC, developed with the invaluable support of ONCE Foundation, the collaboration of COCENFE, reinforcing the perspective of disability, accessibility, and equal opportunities, the contribution of member organizations, for example, CFS, MCS Madrid, and electro and chemically sensitive people for the right to health. And of course, it also includes the voices of people living with these conditions. The combination of professional expertise and lived experience makes it practical, realistic, and deeply connected to everyday life. The Green Book was never intended to be just another publication. We wanted to create a practical tool, a tool that could make a real difference in people's lives. Our first objective was to promote understanding and awareness. The second objective was to encourage accessibility and reasonable accommodation, that is, a practical way of ensuring equal opportunities. Many adaptations are simple, achievable, and beneficial not only for people with MCS and EHS, but also for healthier and more inclusive workplaces in general. A third objective was to build bridges between different sectors, to facilitate the dialogue and cooperation among all relevant stakeholders involved in creating more inclusive environments. Another important objective for this publication is to become a useful reference for all those who have responsibility in the areas of work, disability, health, prevention, and accessibility. And finally, we wanted the Green Book to inspire real change. In fact, the publication has already begun its dissemination throughout Spain, where CONFESC is currently presenting it to public administration, disability assessment centers, employers' organizations, trade unions, and professional institutions. And why an English edition? Because the challenges faced by people with MCS and EHS do not stop at national borders. Every country has its own legislation. Every healthcare system is different. Every labor market has its own regulations. But the barriers experienced by people with environmental disabilities are remarkably similar. That is why we hope the publication will become a starting point for dialogue, cooperation, and the exchange of experiences between countries. We hope it will inspire new ideas, new collaborations, and perhaps similar initiatives adapted to different national contexts. Because accessibility is not a national challenge. It's a shared European responsibility. In conclusion, today we are not simply presenting a book. We are opening a conversation about accessibility, about inclusion, about dignity, and about the right of every person to continue participating in society. We hope the Green Book will become a meaningful contribution to that conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Annabelle. Now we move on and to the last speakers. Last but not least, we welcome Paloma Torres Lopez, a lawyer and holder of a European Master's degree in Human Rights, founder of Medusa Human Rights, the legal consultancy team for Confesc, responsible for the legal strategy underpinning this green book, and other previous Confesc initiatives and documents working towards this aim. Paloma will speak to us about the legal approach Confesc has adopted in this green book and throughout this work. Paloma, welcome.
Thank you very much, everyone, and especially our international partners and all participants joining us today from different countries. Before discussing the Green Book itself, I would like to highlight that this work did not start here. The Green Book is part of a broader process developed by Confesc over recent years to advance the recognition of MCS and EHS from a human rights perspective. It builds upon two reports published in 2023, which precisely sought to make these conditions visible through a human rights approach rather than a health one. Those reports already propose a different way of looking at these conditions, focusing not only on what happens with the affected people, but on the barriers that prevent people from exercising their rights on an equal basis with others. In 2025, Confesc published a study that provided valuable evidence on the realities faced by people living with these conditions in Spain, including barriers in healthcare, employment, disability recognition, and social participation. And the Green Book represents the next step in that journey. If previous reports help us identify and document the barriers, this publication focuses on solutions, particularly in one of the areas where exclusion is most visible, which is employment. Today, I would like to focus on a simple but fundamental question. How should we approach MCS and EHS from a human rights perspective? When discussions about these conditions takes place, they often become trapped in medical controversies, diagnostic classifications, or scientific debates. Yet human rights law starts from a different place, as my Dutch colleague said. The central question is not whether everyone agrees on the causes of a condition. The central question is whether people are able to enjoy their rights on an equal basis with others. Can they access healthcare? Can they study? Can they work? Can they access public services? Can they participate in community life? For many people living with MCS and EHS, the answer remains no. And this is precisely where the disability perspective becomes relevant. I'm not gonna go deeper here because I think my colleague just made it clear. But it's very important for us to say that this is the model, the social and human rights model is the model that underpins the Green Book. However, before continuing, I would like to clarify a concept that appears throughout all this project, that is organic disability. For some international participants, the term may sound contradictory to the social model of disability. However, this is not the case. The concept of organic disability has been deeply developed in Spain by COCENFE. And the purpose of this concept is not to return to a medical understanding of disability, but quite the opposite. The concept seeks to make visible a group of people whose impairments arise primarily from chronic organic health conditions, many of which are invisible. These include people with MCS, EHS, fibromyalgia, Crohn's disease, lupus, multiple sclerosis, or many other chronic conditions. And these individuals often encounter a particular form of exclusion. Their disabilities may not be immediately recognized, and their barriers are frequently underestimated by institutions and society. So organic disability concept, as a concept, is therefore a visibility tool. And most importantly, it remains fully compatible with the conventions, because the issue is not the diagnosis itself. The issue is whether barriers prevent equal participation. And this brings directly to MCS and EHS. People living with these conditions frequently encounter barriers in almost every aspect of their lives. A person with MCS may be unable to enter a workplace because of fragrances, cleaning products, pesticides, paints, or other chemical substances. And a person with EHS may experience severe symptoms in environments with exposure, very low exposure to wireless technologies or electromagnetic sources. In these situations, the problem is not only the health condition itself, the problem is the interaction between the condition and an environment that has not been designed with the accessibility in mind. And this is precisely the type of situation that the convention, the UN Convention, seeks to address. However, I would like to highlight a particularly important challenge from the Spanish perspective. Spain has made considerable efforts over the last 2 decades to align their disability legislation with the principles of the convention. The language of accessibility, inclusion, equality, and reasonable accommodation is increasingly present in our legislation. Yet an important contradiction remains. While our legal framework increasingly reflects the social model of disability, our disability recognition system continues to operate largely through a medical logic. In practice, access to many disability-related rights still depends on obtaining formal administrative recognition of disability. And obtaining that disability, that recognition, depends heavily on the diagnosis and medical assessment. This creates a major barrier for people with MCS and EHS because many encounter disbelief or lack of specialized medical knowledge. As a result, underdiagnosis leads directly to under-recognition of disability, and under-recognition leads to exclusion from protection systems. This is one of the greatest challenges that we face today, because from the perspective of the Convention, disability exists when barriers prevent participation, just like that. But from the perspective of many administrative systems, disability only exists once it has been formally recognized. This distinction has very practical consequences. This affects access to disability-related benefits, to social support measures, to employment protection mechanisms, and it may also affect access to reasonable accommodation itself. As a result, many people with MCS and EHS find themselves in a paradoxical situation. They face barriers that clearly limit their participation, yet they struggle to access the legal mechanism designed to remove those barriers. And this becomes particularly visible in employment. And this is where the second part of the Green Book becomes especially relevant. Spain already possesses many of the legal tools necessary to protect workers with these conditions. We have a strong equality and disability legal framework. Our labor legislation prohibits discrimination on these grounds. Occupational health and safety legislation requires employers to protect workers. The Occupational Risk Prevention Act includes a specific provision for particular sensitive workers. So on paper, therefore, many of the necessary protections already exist. The problem is often not the absence of legal tools. The problem is recognition and implementation. And many employers have never heard of these conditions. Many occupational health professionals lack specific training. Many workplace assessments fail to identify environmental barriers that may be disabling for a specific worker, and this creates another paradox. A workplace may be considered completely safe for most workers while remaining entirely inaccessible for a worker with these conditions. And the result is exclusion from employment, not necessarily because the person cannot work, but because the environment has not been adapted. From a human rights perspective, this is precisely where accessibility and reasonable accommodation becomes crucial. The thing is that accessibility requires us to identify and remove barriers. Reasonable accommodation requires us to provide individual measures when general accessibility is insufficient. For people with these conditions, these measures may include fragrance-free policies, improved ventilations, flexible working arrangement, but these are not privileges. They are not a special treatment. They are mechanisms that make equality possible. And under the convention, the denial of reasonable accommodation may constitute discrimination. And the interesting thing for us is that when discussing accessibility and reasonable accommodation for people with MCS and EHS, it is easy to assume that the main challenge lies in identifying complex or costly solutions. But the Green Book suggests something very different. Most accessibility measures and workplace adaptations are neither technically difficult nor economically burdensome. The greatest obstacle is not the adaptation itself, it's the recognition of the right to that adaptation. Too often, requests for accessibility measures or reasonable accommodations are questioned from the outset because the individual is not formally recognized as a person with a disability. In practice, many people with these conditions are forced to prove not only the need for the adjustment, but also the legitimacy of requesting it in the first place. Moreover, even when adaptations are considered, they are not always implemented in accordance with the guarantees established by the Convention, the UN Convention. The Convention requires an individualized assessment, meaningful dialogue with the person concerned, consideration of alternatives, and decision-making process grounded in equality and participation. But yet in practice, decisions are often informal, discretionary, and inconsistent. Another significant challenge is the absence of clear and accessible procedures. Many institutions and employers do not have transparent mechanisms through which individuals can request reasonable accommodation, participate in the assessment process, receive a reasoned decision, or even challenge a refusal. As a result, what should be a rights-based process often becomes a matter of goodwill, negotiation, or individual discretion. And from a human rights perspective, this is the next frontier. For this reason, the Green Book is not simply a publication about occupational health. It is a publication about rights and about how we translate the principles of equality and inclusion into practical measures that allow people to participate fully in society. And before concluding, I would like to share just one final reflection following my colleague's lead. Faced with the challenges affecting people with MCS and EHS, it may be tempting to think that we need entirely new legal frameworks. But our experience suggests something different. We believe that we must continue to use and strengthen the existing human rights, equality, and disability framework. The Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities remains one of the most powerful tools available. Equality and disability legislation remains at the national level, essential tools, but our strategy should not stop there. We must make full use of all available mechanisms at national, European, and international levels, and this includes administrative procedures, equality bodies, disability institutions, ombudspersons, courts, labor protection mechanisms, and occupational health system. It also includes engaging with the wider international human rights architecture, like United Nations treaty bodies, special rapporteurs, regional human rights mechanisms, and European institutions. And at the same time, we must ensure that MCS and EHS are present in every space where disability rights, accessibility, inclusion, and equality are being discussed. Because if we are absent from those discussions, our realities remain invisible. And if our realities remain invisible, barriers remain invisible too. And this is why CONFESC has invested not only in research and advocacy, but also in practical tools. Alongside the Green Book, I have to say that we have developed guidance materials to help people challenge the denial of reasonable accommodation and access existing complaint mechanisms. And these tools seek to transform rights from abstract principles to practical realities. And our message today is therefore simple. We don't need to wait for perfect scientific consensus. We don't need to wait for future reforms. We must continue using every available avenue: human rights, equality, disability rights, accessibility, participation, and we must continue ensuring that people with MCS and EHS are represented wherever more inclusive disability frameworks are being developed and implemented. And the goal is not the mere recognition of MCS and EHS. The goal is ensuring that people living with these conditions can enjoy their rights on an equal basis with others. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Paloma. It kind of seems that we are in good hands. So what do you think? Have you ever seen a more assertive lawyer anywhere? I haven't. Thank you again. So it seems we have learned and have a lot to think about from today's testimonies and expert wisdom, and hopefully also from the Green Book. To wrap up the meeting, I would like to invite the speakers, if they think it necessary, to make any closing remarks, ideas, or key messages that you would like to emphasize. If that is the case, please raise your digital hands. And if everything is so clear that we don't need to make further points anymore, we can say, Ole, please. You are muted.
I just said I am extremely impressed by the speakers, all of them. And I will just quickly comment a few things. As has been pointed out several times, every human being on the planet is entitled to live an equal life in a society based on equality. And as many pointed out, the tools, they are already there in the form of the United Nations Human Rights Acts and the ones specially focused on people with functional impairments. We don't need to invent the wheel again, just use it. And therefore, I am a bit stressed when I see that our friends, for instance, in North America, they are trying to rename the functional impairment electrohypersensitivity with another name. That's not what we should do. And also they want to turn it into a medical syndrome, which of course certain medical doctors as well as psychiatrists love. but we should never go into that corner because, as it was pointed out, we don't have any such knowledge, and try to rename or recharacterize a functional impairment is never going to work. We should instead allow people with these different functional impairments to sort of being proud. They should stand up, and the rest of us, we should stand up for their rights, their human rights. That's very important. Also, I remember, and that's many years ago, in Sweden, insurance companies came to the conclusion that if society immediately gave, for instance, electrohypersensitive people what they demanded, then the total cost in accessibility measures would be reduced to 1/10, because the other 90% often fall within fighting someone, fighting, and nothing comes out of that. And as someone pointed out, the people that become electrohypersensitive or multiple chemically sensitive or something else, they are highly skilled professionals. They are needed at their workplace. They're needed back home with their families and so on. And we should, as a society, immediately help them. And that's much, much cheaper. Also, to try to exclude someone from work, study, and participation in our society is, of course, a strong violation of the United Nations Human Rights Acts. And we should not play, a tennis ball when we should have a big, big ball instead. And we should never back down. And all electrohypersensitive or MCS persons around the world, they should act as one school of fish under one name and one identification. Also, I liked very much what Anders Brännstedt from Sweden said, that maybe we should all start also at the other end, asking ourselves, as well as people with these impairments, what do they want really, and what do they not want to lose? And you heard that in Sweden, they wanted to keep the excellent magazine that is produced 4 times a year. It's very good. So we should identify where we could do more for everyone. Also to stick to the social model, extremely important. And I hope, if it's possible, that all the speakers' illustrations, the pictures, if we could have them, and because I see many places where the speakers could make a huge difference, not only in Spain, Sweden, and the Netherlands, but at other places in the world. Also, I would like to introduce the concept. Many of the speakers said that the exposures, they are very low, but they are not. You have to remember that, for instance, all types of modern chemicals have never been around on the planet. They are industrial products invented in laboratories. So compared to the natural background, the increase is infinite. It's not a low exposure, it's an enormous exposure. And also, I think it was Martin maybe, told us about the Netherlands, that only 5% of the population is electrohypersensitive, but that means actually nearly 1 million Dutch people. And 1 million, that's a lot. So 5% is a lot. You have to look at the absolute numbers as well. And it's interesting because the United Nations texts, they actually identified down to one single person. If one single person has that kind of functional impairments, the society should make its best to apply a complete accessibility. And also, they never talk about a near complete. It's a complete. accessibility. And what I've seen in Sweden is that when, for instance, electrohypersensitive people stand up and make life hard for the society, that makes a difference. Because I always say that no one wants to kick on someone in a wheelchair. That's politically, you're a dead person. So you should knock and say, hey, I want to have my human rights, nothing more, but nothing less. Very important. Well, I could go on for weeks. I was so excited about all the presentations. They are brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ole. Anyone else can add any further comments? I don't see. I have the reduced. Rob, please go on.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I can fully agree with what Ola just said. He says it so nicely. He's really very good at it. And I agree with him that renaming a disease or a condition is not something that will really change the world. And it will not help us. Maybe it's something which helps in America, but here in Europe, everyone is used to the term electrohypersensitive or electrosensitivity, and many names of organizations even are related to this name of the condition, although, of course, nobody really likes the name because of the word hyper in it, I think. But apart from this, I think the addition we have made in the Netherlands with the social rights of people independent on the medical condition is a very helpful approach. At the same time, we see it still is a fight. It doesn't come by itself. For this reason, I think we have to use both lanes and work on the medical side and work on the social side next to one another. And both roads are not really easy to go. But it's very important to put effort in the road of social rights, as also Medusa has showed us that it is really a fight, and Martina has shown it doesn't go by itself. We have to stand up. But my own experience in my own life, my wife is very much EHS. It is not something which goes by itself. So working together at a European level, I think is a very good thing. And I really enjoy the workshop we have had so far today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Rob, for your intervention. Any more guests? I'm seeing a hand from someone from the public. We have this dilemma if opening or not the turn for the registered person because it's late. So I'm afraid we will leave it to the guest speakers. If anyone else can say a final word or want to share final thoughts. María, maybe you as a...
Sí, me gustaría deciros que cuando hemos llevado el libro verde a diferentes colectivos o grupos o personas que están en la administración o en la administración de adaptaciones de puestos de trabajo, ha sido fácil entrar con el libro y ha sido fácil que entendieran la situación de las personas con sensibilidad química y las personas con electrohipersensibilidad, y también que se vieran reflejados en qué aspectos de su salud se veían comprometidos en sus propios puestos de trabajo. Y esto ha sido un cambio tremendo. No, entendemos que por una parte, porque la gente entiende que tú no bromeas con tu trabajo, que tu trabajo es muy importante porque te mantiene a tu familia y te permite sobrevivir. Entonces uno no bromea, ni juega, ni puede ser, en España decimos friki, no sé cuál es la que sería, ¿no? Con este tema. Y a la vez el hecho físico que Rob preguntaba estos días, ¿no? De llevar el libro, nos ha abierto puertas. Yo le he regalado un libro a la ministra de Sanidad, he regalado un libro a María Neira de la OMS, he regalado un libro, ¿no? a diferentes, he dejado un libro en el Ministerio de Derechos Sociales y esto es verdad que nos ha abierto una manera de entrar. Creo que los procesos de Países Bajos y de España son similares, solo que nosotros acabamos de empezar y vosotros lleváis pues años de ventaja, ¿no? Pero creo que es verdad que vamos un poco en esa línea de crear lo que yo he llamado situaciones de hecho, ¿no? Es decir, hay situaciones de derecho y tú puedes pedir tus derechos y reclamarlos, pero también generas una situación de hecho, que es, existe este libro verde, las organizaciones de discapacidad reconocen este libro y reconocen estas barreras ambientales y a partir de ahí queremos presentar todas estas reclamaciones y a partir de ahí vamos generando una situación de hecho que es, existimos, no tenemos que estar justificándonos todo el tiempo. Simplemente existimos, estamos aquí, hay una situación de hecho que nos va a llevar a reclamar nuestra situación de derecho. Bueno, esta es un poco nuestra experiencia este año, está siendo muy buena con esta herramienta, con este material. No sabemos dónde nos llevará, lo veremos, nos vemos dentro de 2 años y hablamos de las experiencias, ¿no? Y quizás queráis que podamos hacer un trabajo conjunto con otros países donde se pueda usar la base del libro verde y podáis incluir el capítulo 2 de derechos laborales específico de vuestro país y quizás algunos casos de adaptación también específicos de vuestro país y podamos hacer una publicación que podáis llevar en la mano a entregar a quien haga falta, ¿no? A los empresarios, a los sindicatos, a los centros de evaluación de discapacidad o lo que corresponda en cada país. Muchísimas gracias por estar hoy con nosotros, por arroparnos en este trabajo y por permitirnos compartirlo con todos vosotros y compartir las experiencias. Muchísimas gracias.
Yeah, well, it seems we're done for today, but not for tomorrow. Once again, I would like to... It is someone else that wants to talk? Excuse me, Pilar.
Yo solo quiero decir una cosita, no me voy a alargar, solamente quiero decir que ha sido una alegría veros a todos aquí, ha sido maravilloso que nos hayamos encontrado y doy las gracias a todo el mundo.
Thank you, Pilar. Sorry, I haven't thought of you. I don't know. It's just the joy and the everything we've learned today. It seems we have a lot to think about. By the way, we would like to hear from you anytime. We'd love to know whether this Green Book has become the seed of a great collective tea in any other place, in any other country. If it helps anybody, it would be awesome to keep in touch somehow with all of you. We wish you a wonderful summer. And please remember that you can download the Green Book from Confess website and also from the Europeans for Safe Connections website, to whom we also extend our thanks. Thank you all. Thank you for this great time. And bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye and good luck.